her grandpa. And
Why is he here?
because he's going to talk about the World War II in Germany.
Thank you.
Okay. You all heard I'm Franki's opa, or Franki's grandpa. I'm 87 years young. When the war started, I was 17. And at that time, you know, it's the same as today. Young boys, they're excited to get into the army. They don't know much about the war. And same thing happened to me. I was born and raised in Croatia. That was formerly Yugoslavia.
Okay, I'm going to pull the mask down, I think.
Yugoslavia was right across the street from Italy.
Oh, right,
Right
okay,
here.
I can see this pink.
Yeah. Today Yugoslavia is divided in 4 or 5 different little countries. Croatia, Serbia, Slovenia, Montenegro, and Bosnia. And none of those little countries can survive by themselves. And in 1941, the German army moved into Yugoslavia, occupied Yugoslavia, and all young people, I myself, we were German descent. And the Serbian population kind of hated the Germans because the German occupied Yugoslavia.
So they took it over? The Germans came and took over that land?
Yeah, they took over Yugoslavia. And the Serbs and the Croats, they started to fight among themselves. And myself and a lot of German boys joined the German army. At that time, we didn't know about the war, how far the war goes to extend. I joined the army in March, went in the boot camp, and within 3 months, I had all my exercises, all my knowledge about weapons, everything went so fast. And on July 21st, at once, middle in the night, Hitler came on the podium and declared that Germany declared war to Russia. What happened there, Russia and Germany, they both invaded Poland. And then they found out that the communism and National Socialism is pretty much the same thing. So after Germany declared war to Russia, within 24 hours I was already on the boat on the way to Finland. We landed in Finland in Oulu, and we joined the Finnish army because Russia invaded Finland, and Finland joined the German army. So the Germans and the Finnish together were fighting Russia, fighting against Russia. And everything went so fast. The German army, they call it what do they call it? They call it the Blitzkrieg.
Okay.
They call it the lightning storm. The German, they call at that time they call it the lightning war. They marched into Russia and everything went so fast. What they were counting that there's plenty of stuff left in Russia, what they can supply the troops. But they made a mistake because while the Russian was receding, they burned everything. There was nothing left over there. And the roads, there wasn't many highways, rather mud. The country road, there was all mud. And if the weather was bad, we marched up to our knees in mud.
Oh my goodness.
You know. And
Was it cold? It would have been cold there, right?
My platoon was designed to go between Murmansk and Leningrad. There was the supply line because Murmansk was the only harbor that doesn't freeze in the winter, and the supply line was coming from Murmansk, and we were on the supply line between Leningrad and thing. What's so bad about was that the Russian, they outnumbered us 50-1. And on my 18th birthday, we were all dug into, we had, soon you reached you went ahead so far, you dug in. Next day you went ahead again and dug in. We were all for a month and there. On my 18th birthday, I was the youngest soldier in my platoon. And I got to go back to the main unit, to the supply unit. I got a new uniform, and I got to eat lunch with a Red Cross girl, you know, with a, and they took picture of me and everything, you know. Next day I went back into the mountain again. And well, Germany went all the way down to the Black Sea, you know. And when you figured that Germany had at that time 100 million population with all the little countries together, they tried to occupy big Russia, you can figure out that they couldn't occupy
So,
that big land.
boys and girls, you can see
Yeah.
how small, and I mentioned this last week to some of you, I think. These countries are, a lot of them, no bigger than our states.
Yeah.
These countries are all very small, but when you look at the size of Russia,
Size of Russia, you know. And at that time, the German troops went all the way to the Black Sea,
Okay, here's the
and
Black
they
Sea.
surrounded Leningrad, Petrograd, and went all the way up to Leningrad, that time Stalingrad, you know, up to the Stalingrad. And everything went all right until we had that big winter. 1941-42 winter, the temperature dropped to 50 below zero. Not only in Russia, in whole Europe.
wow.
In Europe. And you couldn't drive the trucks. The trucks all died. Most of the trucks were driven by diesel. The diesel froze. So my area where I was, they supplied us with horses and mules. You know.
Wow.
And, well, the war isn't a good thing. We can see it today, what happened. At that time, the German people are very friendly and good people. But when it comes to politics, you know, what happened there, Germany had a big depression, the same depression there was in America
And we
here.
talked about that, right?
Germany had a big depression. And Hitler, when Hitler came in, he started to build highways and factories, and everybody got jobs, and people got all excited for Hitler. Nobody knew what's coming, you know. And after the war, everything turned around. People finally found out the big mistakes they made, you know.
But I was saying earlier, he gave them hope when there was little hope to be had.
Yeah.
He gave them hope that things were going to
But-
get better, and they believed in him.
Nobody knew what kind of crazy idea at that time he had. You know, because when you figure that a little country is going to occupy, you know, the same history repeated. You know, Napoleon tried to do the same thing. He tried to occupy Russia, and apparently Hitler didn't learn anything. I got this here list of all the
Yeah,
questions
we made
you guys
some,
want to
we
ask.
made up some questions for Franki.
I went into the war in 1941, in March 1941, and the war was over May 8, 1945.
Oh, was it?
Against Germany, yeah. Against Germany, yeah. Right?
I spent I fought in Russia as infantry, you know, motorized infantry. We had trucks and motorbikes and everything, but then I wound up with having horses and mules. Okay. Well, there were, when you're a soldier in the war, you probably see a lot of movies about the World War I, how the people dug in trenches. That's how we were living. Wherever we went, wherever we stopped, right away we start digging trenches. Because the Russian was just across from us, you know.
So they would dig a hole in the ground at night. At night, would it be? At night?
Yeah, holes in the ground and from one bunker to the other. And
almost like a ditch.
On every corner you had machine guns and everything. And usually the Russians done the same thing. And they were bombarding each other with the mortars. You know, the mortars go up in the air and come straight down. You know, mortar bombs. And on each corner they had machine guns. And every time we hear, they were so close across from us that they could hear when they got their lunch. They could hear. And usually the night or the day before the attack, they would give them a lot of vodka. And,
Do you know what vodka is?
It's a drink.
It is a drink. It's an alcoholic
they know right away that there's something going on. The following morning at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, they started to shoot the mortars first, and then they would come in waves like the Indians. When you see the Indian war, their war cry was hooray. And they were hooray, hooray, hooray. You know, and everybody, you know, you hear just stand up, scared to death. You never know if they're going to overrun us or not because they were outnumbered us 50 to 1.
Did you hear that when he said that before? For every German soldier, there were 50 Russian soldiers, Soviet soldiers.
And, well...
So they gave them vodka to make them not think clearly? Is that,
a lot of them even didn't carry any guns. They didn't have enough guns for them. They were just running along as a mass, you know. And sometimes very, very scary, you know. Even we were young, you know, and a lot of us got wounded. And after the attack, you know, we had barbed wire in the front, and a lot of Russian soldiers got wounded over there. They were crying and hollering, way middle in the night, always, sanitary, sanitary, and nobody could help them. There was all minefields around, and the Russians never picked up their dead.
wow.
The Germans, when one of our boys got killed, no matter where it was, we always looked for volunteers to go and pick him up and bring him home. The Russians never picked them up. Along the road, you see dead soldiers, you know, and a very, very bad smell, you know, dead horses and dead people. And you feel so bad because when you see a young boy, no matter if he's a Russian or a German, he's still a human being. And I felt very bad. A lot of times I felt very bad. And that, well, what happened there in 1941, we had that bad winter. We didn't have no clothes. A lot of ladies from Germany, they sent in baggages mittens and socks and everything, but that wasn't enough. What we did in my platoon, we took the clothes off of the dead Russians. They had sheepskin jackets.
Because they were prepared, they lived there, they knew what weather to expect.
They had felt boots. We had leather boots, and your leather boots you freeze your feet, you know. So we put the felt boots on because it was so cold. The felt boot doesn't get wet. You know, it was cold. And we looked exactly like the Russians. A lot of times we went on patrols. We went right between, close to the Russians. They didn't recognize that we were not Russians because we looked exactly like them.
Oh my goodness. So you could walk among them and they wouldn't see them.
But what happened, they had a big back draw. After a couple of days, you start itching all over. We got full of lice. That clothes what the Russians had, they were full of lice. Those lice are different than the lice the girls have on their hair. They are bigger and they are white.
And they were in the Russians'
They
clothes.
were in the clothes.
You know clothes that were,
Yeah.
or you know lice that people
Yeah.
sometimes get in their hair? They were on the clothes that they,
And a lot of soldiers who didn't care so much about that, they got all their legs eaten up, all wounds on their legs, you know. But I was young that time, and I took all my clothes off in the night, put it outside, left it out there, froze it, and
Sure.
shook it out, put it back on. Then you lay in the bunker, you lay one next to each other, and the lice came right back. And my mother, she sent me a baggage with 2 jars of apricot brandy and a pound cake. And one jar broke, and it sucked into the pound cake. And when we ate the pound cake, we were all shined up for eating it. But anyway, in the baggage there was a scarf. My sister sent a wool scarf, and a real fine wool. And I figured out, I put the scarf in my back all the way down to my button, you know, left it in and then pull it out and shake it out. The light would flow in there. Yeah. But we had, it was rough. Towards the end, we always say, as long as the soldier sings and makes funny things go good. But then when the morale breaks down, you know, there were bad news coming from their homelands. Their homes were destroyed, bombs. A lot of relatives got killed, and the morale got worse and worse, you know. And with that bad winter, you know, the Germans had a lot of casualties. And because the United States got in the war, you know, the United States got in the war late. Towards the end of the war, our commanders always try to keep the Russians back. And when the Americans landed in French, you know.
yep, that's what we talked about just a few minutes ago, D-Day.
Two fronts, you know, east and west. And our commanders tried to hold the east back and let the Americans come in because they figured they're more humane than the Russians. You know. What happened is the United States, England and French, they made a pact in Yalta. They divided Germany already before the war was over. They gave Russians the bigger pie. You know, the Russians occupied the whole East Germany, including Berlin. Russia occupied Hungary, Bulgaria, all those little countries, Austria, and well, maybe I should go down and look at my list. Yeah, I would say the soldiers, no matter on what side they are, they're all the same. You know, most of the soldiers don't know about politics. They go wherever they get sent. They fight wherever they get sent. You know, and the same was in Russia. The same was in the United States and all over. There was a nice thing once on New Year's Eve, 1941. A couple of Russians defected. They came across the minefield. We didn't know how they got through there to the minefield. We were celebrating in our bunkers, you know, it was quiet, cold, and here they come in. They were from Leningrad, they were young students, and they figured they don't want to fight no more.
Wow.
And we had a nice meal, we had a couple of vodkas and stuff. The only thing, when we were out there, we got a pint of brandy per week too, and a big bar of chocolate, you know. And what I said with the temperature was 50 below, I carried a piece of butter in my pocket and I always chewed on it. I traded my cigarettes and my brandy for chocolate. I didn't smoke and I didn't drink that time, and that kept me going. Had a good spirit, you know. Always tried to invent something. In spring, I dug holes in the trees and I put some cans underneath the tree. I drank the sap from the trees. You know, we couldn't make the syrup, but we drank because the swamp water was no good. You know, and I drank that water. It tasted like real light lemon juice. You can barely taste the lemon in it.
Wow.
And what else? Yeah.
So you had no shelter in the middle of that cold winter. Were there shelters or anything built at all for you to go inside when it was cold like that?
We cut trees down and put it on top of the bunkers, you know.
Okay.
A lot of different layers, you know,
Sure.
so the mortars don't go through that, you know.
Wow.
Yeah. One nice experience I had, I always tell my kids, we went on the, you always try to sneak close to the Russian line and see what they're doing and what kind of enforcement they got. And we had white sheets over, you know, white clothes because everything was white.
Oh.
You know, and we snuck close and there was a old shack there. And I'd once be held in the shack, it was going chick, 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 like a little motor running in there. And we broke the door open. There was nothing, you know, you had a machine gun in your hands, you're looking, nobody in there. We went outside, here it goes again, chick, 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 chick. There must be something in there, maybe it's in the basement or something. Here we look in, was a big porcupine, not a porcupine, a hedgehog. A big hedgehog, you know, in there. And I looked around, there was a blanket in there. I took the blanket, threw him over him, brought him home, we ate him. There was extra good food. Well, we had the way that they fed us over there, every day they would come with mules and horses and bring the food in containers. You know, there were airtight containers like thermos containers, you know. And they would bring the food from the main line to the front line. The food and the mail. It was always a good thing. Everybody was looking for mail. That was the good spot. But a lot of times, right during that time, the mortars would come flying. You could hear already. You know, everybody runs into the holes, you know.
And how did they get those mortars? Did they shoot them out of something, or did they throw them, or how did they get them?
They got launchers.
Oh, okay.
A very simple thing. It's a tube, you know, and you can adjust it. And they go up and they come down.
Okay.
It's a simple tube, and then they throw the bomb into it, and then it flies out like a rocket. It flies over, you know. They got different calibers, small ones and big ones, you know, for different areas. Well, anyway, coming to that porcupine, to that hedgehog, I was a scout leader for 25 years. And we went camping at Camp Bear Paw, the boys. And I told the kids the story about the porcupine in Russia, you know, what they got. And here at once we heard that noise. Chuck, 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 chuck. And the kids went, Mr. Tuxik, that's a porcupine. They all had the flashlight and they run. Here there was a porcupine in the outhouse. He was chewing on the salt, you know, on the salt. Exactly the same thing. Chick, 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 chick. And they run in there with a flashlight. The porcupine got so scared, he ran out and up the. I never see a porcupine run so fast. But there was a story. The other story I had with the Boy Scout, we had a bird, a cowbird, at the camp. The cowbird was so thin, he could eat everything out of your hand, real thin. I said to the boys, everybody, whoever catches the bird gets a quarter. They all tried to catch the bird, they couldn't catch the bird. They couldn't catch the bird. Because when they were trying to catch it, it would fly away. So I tried. I put some food in my hand, in my cup, I caught it. And the bird made such a noise, he screamed so hard. I let him go, he never came back. Oh, everybody hated me. Everybody hated me. Yeah. So, what else? Okay, here's a question. Have you ever the concentration camp? You know something? The soldiers never knew nothing about the concentration camp. I found out about the concentration camp when the war was over. You know, and the soldiers never knew about it. Where I grew up in Yugoslavia at that time, all the people got along very fine. My sister, she babysat in Jewish homes, and we had, at that time, whenever the Jews had the honeycomb, we went from house to house and wished them a happy honeycomb. And if you were lucky and you were the first boy at the Jewish house, they invited you in, they put you on the table, you had breakfast with them and everything. They believed that that's a good thing to have a boy come into the house on honeycomb. And well, all that stuff about the Jews came after the war, you know. And like the soldiers on the front line never knew nothing about what was happening, you know, what was there. Another thing.
Do you think Hitler kept that secret from the soldiers on purpose? The concentration camps and that whole thing, do you think that?
I don't understand what the question was.
Do you think that Hitler didn't tell you on purpose so you wouldn't know about it? Like he was keeping it a secret, the concentration camps?
Or the communication wasn't?
No, nothing about. The same thing about everybody called the Germans the Nazis. You know, the Germans were not the Nazis. There was just a party. You know, whoever belonged to the German party, there was a Nazi. And the same thing, there was SS, you know, the SS. There were two SS. There was the fighting SS on the front line, and there was the brown SS in the country. There was the people who had the concentration camp on that stuff, you know. The fighting soldier was just like the Marines by us, you know. There was they call it the Waffen SS. You know. Okay, now there's another question. Was you injured? I was injured in November 9, 1942. You know. And at that time I was a machine gunner, you know, I was a machine gunner. And the Russians, when they were attacking, they know exactly where the machine guns are, you know. And I got hit by a grenade, flew up in the air, fell down, and there were three guys on a machine gun.
Okay.
Number one, number two, number three guy. And I said to my number two guy, I reached down on my side, and it was all ripped open. And I said, put down a tourniquet. And he said, I wouldn't know where to start, you know. And I had broken hips, broken leg, upper leg was broken, and a couple of toes were missing. The last thing I remember when I passed out, you know, the funny things they always tell you, you know when you're going to die. You know, once you have a good feeling, like you fly away, you know, you just passed away. And when I woke up, I thought I was in heaven. They flew me to Finland in a hospital. Everything was white. I was clean. I was all white. All the nuns running around in white. I thought I was in heaven. It was 3 days later.
Oh, really? You were out for 3 days?
3 days later, I finally woke up. And they put a cast on my whole body. Put a cast on and just left the holes open, but they put the dressing on. And I was in cast for quite a long.
And then after you got better from there, you were able to go back home? Is that?
Oh, no. I was in the hospital for 11 months. I was in the hospital. We flew from. I completely forgot how I got to Germany. But after I seen that movie, John had a movie about a German ship that got sunk. Then I remembered that they put me on a ship. The name of the ship was Stuttgart, was a Red Cross ship. And I remember when they put me on that ship all the way down, I was scared to death because I figured if the ship gets sunk, I'm never going to come out of there. You're going to swim or not. And from there we went to Danzig. And from Danzig, I went on a train to Germany, and I stayed in a German hospital for most of the time. After I got out of the hospital in 1943, they sent me to school. I went to pick up bookkeeping and a library. And from there they sent me to Poland. Poland was still occupied at that time by Germany. There was a school for the officer school, and I built up a library for the officers to study because the library is about the weapons and everything else. And I built up the library. I had to write letters to Berlin and they send me packages every day. A couple of different boxes with different books came. And I was over there until 44.
And still in the military at that time? Was that still considered military time for you?
Yeah. I was still a soldier then. And the commander I had, he told me at that time, he says, Frank, we're going to lose the war. He said, we're going to lose the war. At that time, you know, we were fighting war on two sides, and everything went bad. He said, frankly, we're going to lose the war. But anyway, the commander, he got transferred to Denmark. There was an outfit in Denmark. At that time, Denmark was not occupied by the Germans, but it was friendly to the Germans. And they were supplying a lot of food to the German army. But anyway, he was transferred over there. And a couple of months later, I got a message. I got a message on the, not on the computer or anything, but a letter came. The commander wants me to come to Denmark. You know, everything had to go with the papers. You know, so I was so lucky to get out of Poland to go to Denmark. Denmark was a land of milk and honey. You know, all the soldiers, you could have half a dozen raw eggs, you know. At that time we drank raw eggs, you know, too. And nothing but cookies, cakes, everything good. And a lot of Danish girls over there. That, you know, we had a life of rally over there.
And my group that studied World War II knows that food and those kind of things were hard to come by during the war.
Yeah.
So that would be...
But during the war, there was a lot of German food out there on the front line was not frozen vegetables, but dried vegetables. You know, the dried vegetable because there was no refrigeration and stuff like that during the war. When you figure out the front line was 1,000 miles, 1,000 kilometers, you know, from Germany. You know, it was very hard to transport regular meat. And if a horse or something got killed or wounded, you know, we ate off the horse. You know, everybody ate off the horse. You know. It was good meat. There was nothing wrong with horse meat.
You had to take what you could get.
Good question. Yeah. Well, anyway, you figure how you feel about the. It says how you feel when the war ended. Well, actually, we were happy after 4 years that we can go home. You know, everybody was happy. Nobody knew what's going to happen, but we thought we all going to go home. The war is over. And in Denmark, the English soldiers came into Denmark. You know, they occupied. They came into England and they took. We all surrendered. You know, we surrendered over there. And they were all young soldiers. We had. There was a big school. We were all sleeping outside on cardboard boxes and stuff. You know, there were a couple of thousand there, and they had barbed wire around the school. And whenever about 10, 12 guys got together, we were singing, marched to the gate. They opened the gate. We went downtown and came back at night again. There was no. They didn't hate us or nothing at that time, you know. And after the England released us, you know, out of the prison camp, we went to Germany, and then we came to Kassel, and the Americans caught us. We thought we had all the papers, you know, the release paper. No, we got to check the papers over. And they want to send us to French, to rebuild French. But I had all the papers that I was wounded and everything, so I wasn't able to go to French. And a lot of soldiers, they signed up to go to French because French was recruiting soldiers, German soldiers, to go fight in Vietnam. See, at that time, French was fighting in Vietnam. A lot of people don't know that. We took over from the French. You know, the French moved out and we moved in. And a lot of soldiers, they didn't know where to go. They signed up for the French legionnaires. After the, I don't know, should I say something about the war yet?
Mm-hmm. Talk about what happened with your parents when they were going to go back home after. That's interesting.
Yeah, well, after I got caught by the Americans, you know, they want to check out the papers. One night, myself and another guy, he was one from the Navy guys, he said, well, we ain't going to check out papers no more. There was in Nuremberg. We jumped on a coal train, you know, on a train, was loaded with coal, and it went south to Bavaria, you know. And so we drove to the Bavaria all the way to the Austrian border on the train. And then we jumped off the train right on the border, and we went in the hospital. It was a Catholic hospital, and the nuns, they knew right away that we were all soldiers, you know. They gave us, we could wash up, and they gave us food and everything. And then the following day, we went across the border into Austria, because I had a girlfriend in Austria, in Salzburg, and we went across the border into Salzburg, and I met my future wife over there.
Wow.
I was riding with her all the time, you know, during the war. A good thing about it, as long as I was in the war, I've done a lot of painting. Every time I wrote a letter, there was always a painting in there, a picture or flowers or something, you know. And my wife, my girlfriend, that time, she kept all those pictures, all those letters and everything. After I got to Salzburg, my girlfriend's mother, she was so scared that what do you call it? That I deserted, you know, from the
Oh.
out of the camp. She was so scared. She was scared about it. So I went from there. I went into a camp for fugitives, for displaced persons. You know, because originally my parents they lived in Austria, and Austria was occupied by the Germans. After the war, they don't call it Austria. They call it Osttirol, they call it, you know, because Austria surrendered to the Germans, you know, they got the same language, I don't know if you ever watched the movie, what's the movie? Sound of Music, yeah, you can see that. During the war, the Austrians, they all worked for the Germans because the Germans provided work and everything. They built the big highways and bridges. Everybody got work, you know, and they were all for the Germans. And after the war, they all were independent again. Austria is independent. It was a big. Anybody else want to ask something?
We want to know about Frankie's outfit.
Frankie's outfit?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
You should come up.
Yes.
Yeah, go stand up there. Okay.
That's a regular Bavarian outfit. When you go mountain climbing, you have that stuff on, they call it lederhosen. It's supposed to be made out of deer skin, you know. And they got a hat, it's a Tiroler hat, they call it Tiroler hat. And wherever you go mountain climbing, for every town you visit, you buy one of those flags. And the more flags you got, the more famous you got. And the same thing, the lederhosen. You wear the lederhosen all the time for picnics and everything, and after a while it gets all full of grease and everything. But the heavier it gets, the more famous it is. And also they carry a stick with them, you know. And you put the same flags on the stick. You know. Lederhosen. John, my youngest one, he was about her age when we had the lederhosen for him.
And how old were you when you went to the United States?
Well, after the, go ahead.
Who are the people that, like, on the ship? Do you know anybody, like, when you, like, sail or something? What was, like, the people on the ship, too?
Did you come here to America, Cooper?
Wait,
On the ship, I think.
Did you take a ship to America when you moved here? Did you take a ship?
No, I think I came. The way I came to America after the war, when I was in Salzburg, I looked for a job, and I got a job working for the American Army as a cook. But I didn't cook for the Army. I cooked for the people who worked for the Army. There was about 40 people. The Army hired those people, and I cooked for those people. And I got quite a few friends, made good friends with those guys. We played cards together, and they always said, you should move to America. I said, you move to America, within 5 years you can buy a house, but don't drink and don't buy a car right away.
So that's the land of opportunity that we kind of have been reading about, huh?
A priest came to Salzburg. He visited my best friends. He was in a hospital, and the priest came over there, and he says, you guys should move to the United States. And he said, well, we don't know what to do about it. He said, I got the papers right with me, you know. He had some papers, we filled out the papers. My best man and I both, and that's how we came to the United States. We came on a ship. The name of the ship was General Hershey. It was a troop transporter. You know, they brought the troops to Europe, the new troops, and they brought the old one back, you know. So they used the ship to bring, we had 1,200 people on board.
Wow.
And I had, my oldest boy was 6 weeks old
Wow.
that time, and I was 27 that time. So that's how we came to the United States.
And how many days were you on the ship to get here?
We're supposed to take 10 days.
Wow.
But we took 12 days because on the way here, one ship had an accident. One of the Russian ships had an accident when they didn't have a doctor on board. So our ship went out of the way to help over there. So it took 2 more days. It took 12 days to get here. And when we see the Statue of Liberty, you know, we were all happy.
So did you come through Ellis Island, or?
Did you come to Ellis Island?
Yeah, everybody goes to Ellis Island. You have to.
We just learned about that.
You have to take all kind of shots, you know, and stuff, you know, and get interrogated and all that stuff.
The checkpoints we just learned
Yeah,
about
we
at
did,
Ellis
yeah.
Island?
Yeah.
And you were,
Those cookies are famous German cookies. They call it Lebkuchen.
Opa made them yesterday.
It's similar to gingerbread.
They smell
Similar,
wonderful.
but it's better than gingerbread.
Were you part of the group that attacked Pearl Harbor?
That would have been a
No,
Japanese.
those were Japanese. Those were Japanese. That was, that time I was in Russia when that happened.
And when something like that happened, would you find out about that within a couple of days, or not for a couple of weeks, or?
A couple of weeks, yeah, you heard about it, you know.
So if it happened December 6th, you probably heard about it around Christmas.
You're right.
That's how communication was. Now we know things instantly with the internet.
Friends when you were in war? Did you have any friends when you were in war?
Yeah, I was injured in the war.
Did you have friends? Were you were friends with the people that you were fighting with, I'm sure?
Yeah.
Friends, yeah.
Yeah, all friends, all my schoolmates, lost a lot of young boys. They were all my age. It might be a little hard yet. Then what happens when you bake them, you gotta put them in the freezer, and then when you take them out of the freezer, they get soft. I don't know if
No,
that's
they're good. Clayton, question?
I had 2 ancestors that were in the war.
Okay, here.
You had 2 ancestors that were what?
In the war.
In the war? Okay. A couple others said that this morning that they thought grandparents had been in the war, and they were in their 80s, so I
Could be.
said that it's possible, yeah.
Yeah, they claim that every day 100,000 soldiers died from the World War II. You know, now every day. You know, the last one from World War I died a couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah, it was
Couple of weeks ago. He was 111 again.
I think, Jonah, yours will be the last question we have time for.
Yeah, but there's the only thing I'm gonna say is that the German people are friendly people, and you know the politics. You know, they're talking about Nazi and all that stuff. That has nothing to do with the people itself. You know, now today we are friends with Germany, and one of our best allies, Germany. We are friends with Vietnamese, fought the war. A lot of times a war is a bad thing, and everybody is happy when the war is over.
Jonah?
Okay,
What year did you come home when you came home from? What year did you come home from the war?
when I came home from the war was a bad time. I found out that I lost both my parents. My parents, they made a big mistake. During the war, they lived in Austria. when we had properties in Yugoslavia. My dad, we had a house there. First we had some more properties there. And my dad, he thought, well, the war is over, let's go home. And soon they got home. They put them in concentration camp and they both starved. They starved to death. See, that time, Tito was Stalin's best friend. You know, Tito and Stalin, they were good. They were just as bad as Hitler.
Stalin was the Russian leader,
Yeah,
right?
Stalin was the Russian leader, and he starved a lot of his own people. And in Yugoslavia was there, Tito was there, and he tried to exterminate all the German and Croats and Bosnians, put them all in camps and starved. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out.
Did you give away the host?
I don't know how much they did know about
The tape is 5 minutes left on that.
I got a CD, was it? Oh, on it.
Is it still playing?
Yes.
You should have gone there at the library. I mean, at the museum.
Hi.
You can say hi.
Hello.